Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you're online and your camera's on so we can ensure that you can hear us. Somebody or a wave or something online. Okay, I got that. I got thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you very much. We would love to ensure that everyone signs in, so please take a look at the attendance form. It's 6:35 and we're going to get the meeting started. We've got a really robust agenda, so I'm going to try and keep it tight and rolling along. So with that, can I have a motion to approve the November minutes?
Motion.
That's so moved, seconded. Are there any abstentions, any noes, any recusals? Any issues with anything? Fantastic. Minutes pass unanimously. Again, a gentle reminder, please sign in. The attendance form is on the agenda. We're going to welcome Hudson River Park friends. Connie has a presentation today.
Could we put the attendance thing in the chat, possibly?
I have a drive.
It doesn't. The computer is not taking drives.
Okay, is it working?
Alrighty.
And it's going to share for you.
I will indeed.
It's in my documents. Oh.
You just make sure I've got
Okay.
the right one.
Yeah, but I don't have.
Give me 1 sec and I will be all yours. All right. Connie, fingers crossed. There we go. All righty.
Have a way to
Clicker.
advance.
No, you got it.
I will be your personal clicker this evening. How's that?
Anyone stand right here? That way I can see what you're looking at and see the screen.
Okay.
Well, thank you for inviting us back. The last presentation was just this past May, so some of the information hasn't changed all that much because we already had our budget set and some of our events, but I will just go through this. For people who weren't at the presentation in May, I want to start with what are the reasons essentially that our friends is raising money. These are the resources that we work with the trust on making sure have enough funding for different programs, starting with the marine science education program and their habitat monitoring. This includes lots of the classes that you see happening in the park, the things that are going on back at the end of Pier 57 in the Discovery Tank, and sort of informal programs that go on that involve our combination of volunteers, the general public, kids who come on field trips, just a whole bunch of different areas. The marine science to the education and the independence actually one of our most popular areas for people wanting to devote funding to. Next, this is related, the environmental stewardship and sustainability, and that includes funds and manpower that we provide to the plastics removal essentially program that goes on the shoreline, to the taking care of things like the habitat gardens and to the composting program. Horticultural maintenance in general is where a lot of our funds go to. This is a combination of resources for the gardening staff, machinery, equipment, plants, trees, sometimes the staff itself. Sometimes we have others who want to actually provide a gardener. And the work that is done by volunteers out in the fields during the season from about the end of March to the first week of December. Public programs,
Maybe not.
the music, the dance, the fitness program. So these are all recipients of Friends funding. Volunteering, we have a lot of volunteers. There's a section further down in the presentation with more details. The playgrounds, we've got a big playground committee, and they have done capital campaigns, which is next on this list for one rehabilitated and one brand new playground. Dog park maintenance. This started during COVID when the trust didn't have enough resources for all of the maintenance that's required on the dog park. And those were in the areas always open and always busy during COVID. Marketing and communications, we worked together on funding the marketing materials, communications programs, press resources, and staff to fill those positions. Outreach and advocacy, which is part of the mission that Friends was doing in the very beginning. General operating support for whatever the trust needs that needs resources, and then emergencies and unanticipated expenses. These are the overall revenue sources where we get donations from to give to the park. Our board of directors, our individual givers, we have corporate members and a business council. Events still bring in quite a bit of money. Our membership program, the Friends with Benefits for the people and the four-legged friends for the dogs. Then we have subcommittees of the board, which are both board restricted and public. We used to do fundraising for things like the arts and culture, environmental programs, and sports and athletics in the park. Our playground committee, we've got about 120 playground committee members right now who support the playgrounds and children's programming in the park. They began as fundraisers to help fix Pier 25 after Superstorm Sandy. And most recently, they were our leads in creating the Pier 26 science playground, the ones with the giant fish at North Main Street. Our athletics program, we have Team HRPK, which is we get charity bids from the marathon and the half marathon that people raise money to get, and then they get to run with a Team HRPK shirt on their bid. Our park dedication programs for people who want to purchase benches and other areas for dedication to an individual, sometimes living, sometimes as a memorial. Events from mid and major donors. These are people who are not on the board but have significant capacity, and we do these house parties to try and get them involved in the park, usually their neighbors. Capital campaigns that I mentioned, and from foundations, and a very small amount from local grants. Not reading all these. These were our members this year. There's about 55 of them. Combination of corporate members, of which about 20 some are also in our business council, which is a separate group that does also membership, but on top of that, they have sort of more in-depth involvement with the park, whether it is through an event that they're attending on behalf of their company, brainstorming about ways to get their employees involved in the park, things like that. Next. And this is our current 60 or so community partners. These community partners are mostly local businesses. Some are in the park, some are outside of the park, but very nearby usually. And they provide discounts to our membership program. So you can go to these businesses, and sometimes it's like a 10% discount if you show your membership card, or a free drink at a bar, or something added to your meal. And some of them wind up also becoming sponsors for some of our smaller programs. And then these groups, but in particular the corporations, participate heavily in the volunteer program. So this past year, ending in December, we had about 2,800 volunteers. They were out for over 100 events in the park. This is the tally of how many plants, how many bulbs, the hours they donated, and the amount of companies who were volunteering. For the most part, they are involved in volunteer horticulture, in composting, and in the shoreline cleanups that I mentioned before. And these are actually a lot of fun. This is our calendar for the past year. So there are lots and lots of events starting in April. Everybody in the world wants to come out for Earth Day. So April winds up being extremely busy, even when the weather is bad. And then the rest of the volunteer events happen in turn that page. Mostly June. It slows up a little in July and August because a lot of people don't want to come out when it's super hot. And then it runs through the end of November. And this year, I think our last Green Team event was Saturday in early December. We have volunteer gardeners who are neighborhood gardeners also. That is totally separate from the events. These are people who come out 2 or 3 times a week often. Have their own little section. They work together with the horticulture staff. They get their own tools. They sort of check in on a weekly basis to see what's going on in their area. And they are responsible for a lot of the gardens that need sort of extra care, like the apple garden in Greenwich Village or the garden up by Chelsea Piers. Okay. And then events, as I mentioned, our 2 biggest events being the gala and the playground committee luncheon. The gala is already scheduled for this year on October 9th. The luncheon is coming up on the 7th. And then a list of other events that we do throughout the year. Some with the playground committee, some with the development committee. We have 4-legged friends activations with different dog run sponsors that we have right at the dog runs. We have a speaker series for the businesses that are part of the business council. And then our members have a combination of annual celebrations, tours, volunteers. We're having a volunteer appreciation night coming up next week, I believe. And then the cultivation events that we do with our larger donors. These are some highlights from our more recent events. Gala, our business council, an annual meeting for our development committee, and a winter festival for the playground committee and their children. We actually had a great business committee meeting here as part of the River Project program, where the educators told them about everything that was going on in the park. And then some of our events are related to our specialty fundraising groups, which are a subset of our development committee. We had a gallery tour for the arts and culture group, a science project essentially with kids for our environmental sustainability group, and this is one of our marathon runners. And then new initiatives coming for the current year. So we're talking about, with the trust, about a rotating public art program that we would have our arts and culture committee help us fund, working with partner, either someone like the Public Art Fund or a public art curator who is, sort of specializes in this type of art in the park, and then create a program where somewhere or in multiple places in the park every year you could see rotating public art exhibitions. The other thing we are working with the trust on right now is evaluating our capacity for another capital campaign for completing funding for the estuarium. I understand that the design of the estuarium should be sometime this year. And so we want that to dovetail with when the trust would otherwise be able to start going out and getting contractors to begin looking at putting together the facility. We are working with a foundation right now on creating a Hudson River Park archive. The trust has a large but somewhat unruly room in Pier 40 that is the home of archives of materials, both photographic and documentary, where things that have existed since essentially before DOT left the West Side Highway back in the nineties. And we use it a lot, but it is extremely cumbersome because it's not well organized yet. So we're working with a foundation that specializes in this kind of funding to see if we can put together a multi-year program to put the archives that the trust has in good shape. And then lastly, we're working with the Harvard Business School Community Partners Alumni Group to put together a major donor initiative this year. They choose from among different nonprofits to essentially work for free on a project. You submit like 2 or 3 things you'd like somebody to help you with, and they choose the one that they think fits the constituents that they have in that city and what their interests are. And so they chose this initiative, and hopefully we'll start working together with them next month. And their purpose would be to kind of create like a playbook for us where they identify the top prospects in certain categories by cross-referencing mostly public information that they can find online with personal connections that they may have through Harvard Business School or their business relationships. And then at the end of it, give us sort of an electronic notebook to work from to go to the next step where we start engaging these people on why they should be interested in giving to Hudson. And I think that's it.
Awesome. We had a couple questions come in, so I wanted to just start because you did talk about the funding. So I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions that have been sent to us. Does Friends ever advocate for increased governmental funds like city, state, or federal funding?
We work together with the trust on that. One of our former employees is actually now currently one of our assembly people in the park. So we do have relationships. We split the way we look for money so that we're not double applying essentially. We don't want to be competing with the trust if we're all looking to fund the same kinds of projects. So Friends typically funds operational things and the trust funds the capital. And so the trust has a line in the state budget that allows it to receive capital money directly without a lot of the bureaucracy that Friends would need to go through. And so we sort of work together at the beginning of every year. It's actually coming up next month to decide who's applying for that for elected officials.
Awesome. And what percentage do you think of the fundraising revenue comes from corporate versus individuals?
Right now, the highest area of fundraising is still events because of the gala. The gala brings in, I think this year was 2.6 million, and the luncheon is slated for 470 million. The corporate program this year brought in, I think, 1.2 million, and the individual giving program brought in 1.1 and change.
Okay. I know there's got to be lots of other people who have lots of other questions, so let's pass it around. We have more questions that I could go through, but let's see, in the room.
Madam Chair, is there any way to make the microphones a little better? It's difficult to hear Connie.
Barely hear you. Do you
I-
mind?
In the room first. We're gonna do in the room first, answer.
So thank you. As it relates to the school program, how long has that been in place? And what, can you give us a sense of the scale of the type of project that you might to them to?
I'm not going to do this.
Involved in them. Friends had a board member up until I think the first year of COVID, who was an alumni, and she
Still can hear.
chair recently of the Harvard Business School Alumni Board. So they started looking for people to reach out to, not in terms of associated nonprofits. She recommended us, and then we had an interview, and we haven't done anything with them yet. The last communication I got, which is about 3 weeks ago, was that they are in the process of doing outreach to New York City alumni to see who's interested in working with them on the project. I don't know the total number of people that they select for a single project. I think it's maybe around a dozen. And then our hope is, you know, the project that I was talking about earlier, somebody who does a lot of this legwork that we don't necessarily have time for, the research on various individuals who they think should be receptive to giving Hudson River Park for various reasons. And then they do what the fundraising world calls relationship mapping to try and find the tentacles that exist to reach this person. And then they prepare a brief for us that says, you know, this person is very interested in the environment, or this person is very interested in the arts, and here are the other places they give to. And from a capacity standpoint, we think this is the range gift you should be able to ask for. And here's where they live, so you know the proximity to which park and what resources they probably use, and kind of put together that whole package and then hand that to us along with a recommendation of here's the kind of outreach we think you need to do. Like, here's your sort of your path to success.
Got it. Thank you.
Speak up a little bit, maybe repeat the question whenever the next one comes in.
Oh,
So people
okay.
online can hear you, but a little bit louder.
All right.
Quick
Okay.
one, the 2.5 from the gala, is that net, like after expenses, or is that?
No, the 2.6 is gross, and the gala expenses are roughly, I would say this year, 840,000. So, I mean, the rule of thumb is you don't want your expenses to be more than a third of your gross.
Anybody else in the room before we go online? You can, it's not like this is your last chance. Let's go online, and then if anything sparks your, Tom, you're next.
Tom, you're on mute.
Tom, you have to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Connie. That was a great report. You guys are doing good work on the ground.
You're soft
Am I
spoken.
still muted?
Oh, you're not muted. You're just soft spoken.
Yeah, very unusual for me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry for the interruption. One question I have is advocacy, outreach and advocacy. If you don't advocate, trust has often said that they can't advocate for funding from agencies because they work for the governor and the mayor. They can work within their system to try and get funding, but advocacy is pushing for larger scale funding. It's wonderful what you're doing with what you have, but there are some big issues in the park regarding funding, and perhaps you might consider a more creative approach to advocacy because you've got so many corporations on the board instead of, you know, an annual contribution. How about some major projects that you could raise capital with on the private sector, and or the federal government, the state government, and the city government. You do have a former employee who's an assembly member. However, they're limited in their ability to lobby, and nonprofits can lobby up to, I think, 5% of their annual revenue. So you might think of looking for the larger chunks of money, as infrequent as they're going to be with the federal change. But that's been a traditional role for Friends in advocacy, and it might be helpful to resurrect something like that, if possible.
I mean, that is definitely something we engage in, especially at capital campaign time for larger gifts. The more recent giving by people like City Council, it's larger on the capital side than it is on the operational side. But they are more generous in terms of the capital money. For example, you know, the playgrounds have gotten $1 million a piece for the capital campaigns from the local council people.
Right.
And we absolutely want to engage them for these larger amounts, in particular for the estuary campaign, if we're engaged in that this coming spring or fall.
Good.
Tom, do you have any questions?
Well, I had another question. You say that all these signs in the park say that Hudson River Park is not a city park and depends on your generosity. That's a little bit disingenuous. I mean, there is an operating budget from the state or somebody for the park, and uh, it just all the time I read those signs, I keep saying, well, people think, you know, the city and state abandoned this thing to whatever you can throw in, but that's not the case. So the perception may be a misperception, if you will, because it does receive operating funding from public agencies.
I'm not sure exactly which sign you're talking about, but you know,
Everyone I've ever seen. It
Sorry?
starts off with New York. I have one right here. I'll read it for you if you'd like. It's on my desktop.
I'm
But anyway, you got the point.
We're definitely on a number of our signs, particularly our events series and others where Friends has given us support, but also Friends certainly has their own signs in the park that do talk about that, you know, we don't receive funds. And it's true, we don't receive, the trust does not receive operating funds from the city or the state. We generate our own funding on
Correct.
this, and we are generally pretty successful on the operating basis of covering our own operating expenses, and that's what we generate from our leases, major leases in the park. We're certainly Pier and Pier 57 in one of them, Chelsea Piers, Circle Line, and other tenants, permits, fees, other opportunities where we do generate revenue. What we've long said is that where our shortfall says and where we look towards increasing revenue is on the capital maintenance side, just the long-term maintenance, not just a capital side for building new park, but the ongoing maintenance and community expenses, which we'll cover later. I get to the report that go over ongoing park. And one of the places that we do get support for our operating cases is Hudson River Park.
Yeah, I do understand the revenue you generate is significant. The issue is if
Depends on donors. I will say that we get most of our operating funds from tenant leases, but also some of it from friends, from donations, and therefore maybe you should give a little bit of a mouthful. So I think on the signs it is trying to be solicited for donations to try to help, you know, so that friends can continue to help raise money for us, which is something I think, you know, as a park we really appreciate. And you know, we put that money to good use as part of all of the good things that we were able to do here.
when we talk to people, we're very careful about saying that Hudson River Park is supported by earned income and private philanthropy. We don't, when we talk to people, we don't ever claim that 100% of park operations and maintenance is supported by Friends.
So Friends is not allowed to advocate for city or state funding for our park at all.
That isn't what I said. I just
Oh,
said
okay.
we don't mislead people into thinking that the majority of operating revenue doesn't come from the earned income that the park gets from tenants and permittees.
And Tom, what you said, I don't know if you heard it, but I'll just repeat it a little bit louder for you, is that they meet every year with the Hudson River Park Trust to ensure that there is no overlap in the requests for any kind of funding, whether it's city, state, federal, or I assume corporate, so that they're not chasing the same pots for the same purpose. And so they have a yearly meet and
We actually
Planning.
probably talk every day, so.
I can appreciate that wholeheartedly. Advocacy is creating new pots, and Friends has the flexibility to do that because it's outside of the government stream, so it can shake the tree the way the trust may not be able to. But I'll stop talking. Thank you.
we have more. Tom, you good then? Any
Yep.
other questions?
Fine.
Fantastic. Anybody else in the room? Alrighty, at 7:05, thank you so very much. And Connie, we appreciate you coming. Please note that if anybody from your board ever feels like attending in your place, we'd welcome them as well. Alrighty, let's move on to the next speaker because we have a seriously robust night ahead of us. So the next is the conversation about the ULURP and DEIS for the Western Rail Yards, the environmental impacts on the trust, on the land, discussion and possible resolution. I can share some notes and points that we had discussed. We pull that up and share that. So the question is whether or not, and again, this is going to go back to the group in the room, whether the group feels we would like to do a resolution based on this. And so the Hudson River Park, the Advisory Council requests that the HRPT Board of Directors assess the potential impacts of the Hudson Yards Phase 2 proposal and any other large-scale developments proposed adjacent to the park. The trust board should provide comments on these projects during the public planning and approval process to raise and eliminate or mitigate potential impacts. As the park stewards, the trust must protect this limited resource for use and address issues that may affect park access, the safety and enjoyment of park users, and the health of the estuarine sanctuary and its aquatic wildlife. This is up for discussion whether or not we would like to pass a resolution on this or not. It was discussed on executive committee, and we definitely need Robert to give us an update, because I don't know if you did.
So we have, particularly also since this request came in, we've had our staff look at the DEIS. There are not significant unmitigated impacts noted or significant impacts noted for the park. There are certain pieces that certainly it is our neighbor. We know it, that there are some, certainly there'll be more people, although there are parks that are certainly more affected that are closer part of it, certainly the High Line, and some of the other immediate adjacent parks. There is, and I think this is the question we've gotten from the Advisory Council's leadership, particularly with some of the shadows. There is a change in some of the shadows. Some shadows, there are some from the 2009 rezoning, there are less shadows in some places, slightly more shadows in other places. Overall, it is not a significant change from what was previously approved. Maybe we're talking in 2009 here. So we certainly are welcome. If you guys have comments and thoughts, we welcome. If there's something you guys think that we missed or that we should be commenting on, we'd be happy to hear it. Certainly, we appreciated the Advisory Council's thoughtful comments on the Battery Park City DEIS, which we took efforts to try to make sure we were echo and reinforcing. So we'd obviously welcome any comments you guys have.
And for those who have access to the agenda, please note we did attach CV4's response to the ULURP action, and in there, their concerns were noted, although
Do not believe we were named.
we were not named. Wendy?
Yeah, thanks for that. But I think what we're asking for, although we haven't yet asked, because this is just a draft sitting on the table, but should we pass this, what we're really asking is something more than you saying, we're happy to hear what you think. We want to hear what you guys, are thinking more detail on that. So I would like to make a motion that we introduce and pass this resolution.
Okay. Let's,
Is that premature?
I think it's
Madam-
premature because we haven't had discussion, so it's, but we should hear from both, anybody who thinks yes, no, maybe, etc. Anybody in the room? Michael?
Like a standard protocol that is established for how this should, somebody mentioned that once before, like what should we expect? Because I seem like I have a deja vu feeling around this conversation. So I just wonder, like, maybe we should just, I feel close to endorsing the letter that was presented, but I'd like to backtrack and just figure out, I wouldn't like to be here again. I just think we should just establish what our expectations are. Obviously, we have different expectations when we come to moments like this. And I feel like clear is kind, and maybe we should just clarify what our expectations are and see if they can be met, then we wouldn't have to do this again. Submitting a letter every time we have questions about some process seems to me not effective. I would rather understand what the committee thinks or what this group thinks the dialogue should be at these moments, at these inflection points, and then we just run that pattern. Rather than, because I think that this of us always having to submit a letter or whatnot feels a little bit, just slightly antagonistic. And there's not the relationship that I think we actually have. It doesn't represent the real relationship, which is just like, as Robert says, they welcome our feedback. So what's the standard process? And is it on us or on them? And maybe you just clarify those steps.
Our role in the advisory council is to advise on everything that goes about planning and operations and other things for the park. This is across the street, but it does have impact. The Battery Park City Authority project is taking place in our park. So that was a very clear aspect that we should be commenting as an advisory council, and we should be working with the trust. The trust is at a point where they have to work with all the other agencies, and being an agency kind of on its own, we are in a unique position to be able to push a little bit and be a vocal point that helps them in a
So,
way.
okay, then I'll clarify what I'm asking for then. I think what I'm asking for is I feel close to something you said. I think I heard what you said was, I'm interested to know what the experts think.
Right, if I may, I mean, I agree with everything that you just said, Tammy, which is that, there is a unique relationship, a unique situation, because there is the advisory council, that can particularly ask. Michael, I don't see it as being antagonistic at all. I think it's us, just doing our job. This is information that we'd like, and, just reiterating what Tammy said, it counts more, if it's in writing, So, I mean, that the trust is specifically being asked.
By the advisory council.
Everyone, if you could try to speak up for those online, I think it's cutting in or out. Those of us that are loud and project are getting heard. Some of you who are bumbling are not.
So that's you and I, the loudmouth?
Yeah.
I'm just checking. Tom,
Mumbling.
Tom, please.
Hi. Yes, our observations at our last advisory council meeting were, I think, threefold. One is there was very little connectivity.
Can hold the mic in front of your mouth, that would.
Well, can you hear me? Sorry.
Much better.
Okay. We had observations at our last meeting that I thought were threefold. The first is that there was very little attention given to connectivity. And they kept saying, we're a good neighbor, we're a good neighbor, we're a good neighbor, we're across the street, we're not doing anything to the park. Well, you've got to connect to the park. And they showed nothing about how they were going to connect to the park. That was the first question that was raised. Second was the lack of athletic recreation facilities. They're adding 3,057 people to this unit, to this development residence. Where are the children playing? We already heard last time there was a difficulty with ball fields in the park and they were oversubscribed. So that was a second concern in terms of the project. And the third was the shadows in the river. And I know it's not thought of as a cumulative effect, but if you're building a 100-story building in Tribeca, 60-story building in Gansevoort Plaza, a 190-story building here, a 55-story building up on Clinton Cove, all of a sudden there's a wall of buildings starting to shade what is an estuarine sanctuary, and fish are sensitive to light. So those are the kinds of questions we had. I think, Michael, you're right, that this resolution really focuses on a process. We are really asking the trust, this is a major project across the street, which will have an impact on the park, whether they say so or not, my opinion. And we'd like the trust to begin to at least let us know how they're responding to these issues so we can be aware and advise them, because our job is to advise the board of directors. And we can't do that without information. So this is a simple request to start the ball rolling, as you said, with a process that makes sense. Thank you.
Part of the problem is it's very hard to hear you because you come in and out yourself. So I'm trying to take notes on what you're asking, because it would be good if we put in bullet points. For example, HRPCAC has concerns, requests experts to review, right? the shade and light as it affects the estuarium and the park, connectivity, and access between the development and the park, right? And what was the last one?
The last one was the lack of active recreation facilities. They're designing a nice front lawn for the residents, but they're not caring about the children.
Or residents.
And our ball fields are already oversubscribed, so where are they gonna go where are they gonna go if not in our park? And that's an impact.
Is that a bad thing if it drives more people into the park for active recreation? I'm just asking.
Well, if it lengthens an already lengthy list, probably. It's more competition on limited resources. This park is a limited resource. It's not getting any bigger. The more people you jam into it, the worse the experience for everyone. And proximity is a major, the access and such, but I'm just talking from a park planner's perspective.
Work this.
Right.
I mean, I'd give some thought how to word it, but it's akin to what we were dealing with when we were having school overcrowding issues in Lower Manhattan because of all the multifamily building, residential building going on. There's no question that a build like this is going to bring families and children, and without increasing the resources to accommodate, it's just going to continue to create stress and strain on what we have, which we can't keep pace with today.
To exacerbate the problems.
I do just want to note, so there is, as part of the DIS process, there is a formal way for evaluating this. This is from shadows, including from DEC and others, what the impacts on the river are, an open space piece, which is the formula, understanding that, there are places and times that folks do not feel. I think school overcrowding is one of the places they don't feel the formula accurately represents pieces. There were parks that were identified as having significant adverse impacts from including increased people, increased attendance, those sorts of things. We were not one of them. So I think, this is where one of those places where I hear when you sort of open-ended question about what are we doing to respond. We've looked at them. There were not significant adverse impacts identified for a park. We do not, I believe, have a feeling that somehow they have grossly missed something as part of this. But that's where having your folks in the community, folks who live this and who have points of view on design and others that are outside of the park. We certainly sort of welcome those sort of specific points and feedback that we take into consideration and that we could go then try to evaluate.
We would really like you to do that up front yourselves because you have the expertise to do it. And for example, the issue with the shadows, the DEIS says the natural resources, they're not going to affect any terrestrial wildlife. They mention nothing about aquatic wildlife. So, consultants get paid to do EISs for people who want projects to go through, not to create problems for them. It's the public's job to bring up these issues so they're addressed properly, even though they may be expensive for the developer to do.
Leslie from CB4.
So, not only am I repping CB4 tonight, but also the co-chair of the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee for CB4 and on the Land Use Committee, coincidentally for CB4 that wrote this resolution or helped to write the resolution. I think that the response or the comments from this body is a little lukewarm. We would hope that you would be good partners with CB4 and understand our position. Though some of the things I know we're getting to the little nitty gritties of shadows and, the fish and all that, there is an element of being good neighbors. And there's an element of working together and, things don't happen in a vacuum, right? Like we understand that there's some things that don't specifically relate to you guys or us in this body, like losing 4,000 units of housing and changing it all to commercial. Does it really affect this body necessarily for, no, but there is an element of the overall effect. So I think we would ask that we have some stronger words to kind of coincide with what Community Board 4 had said. This was an outright denial of changing this zoning or this request for altered zoning from housing to pretty much all, not all, but almost all commercial, to allow to apply for a casino. It wasn't necessarily a casino, but allow to apply for it. They had to change that element of it to apply for it. So again, we understand that it's, a lot of this does not specifically relate, but Tom is right. The plans they had, it's like a wall between here and between them and the park is like a concrete wall. And I know some of that is necessary because it blocks off the Port Authority buses that come below. Or I'm sorry, the rail yards that come below. But anyway, we would just ask that we would have a little bit more of a string of stronger language, hopefully, that would coincide with CB4. And also, Sally, you're here from Chelsea, right? Block Association.
Council Chelsea Block.
Yeah.
Completely supportive of the CB4 letter and will point to it. Our letter represents that. Chelsea Block Association is in full support of community force letter.
Well, and as Tom said at the end, these environmental impact statements are paid for by the developer. And it's theoretically an independent consultant, but they're helping to facilitate the project. So what they've identified or how they answer the question is they're answered in order to make the development go through. And it doesn't mean that they're complete or that those things shouldn't be challenged. And I think the important thing about the resolution is that we are asking the trust board to advocate for the park and not be passive.
You bring up an excellent point, and I don't know if it's available to this body, but the Highline did their own environment study on shadows and wind and all that. I don't know if anyone there saw that, but there were some conflicts in that as to what Related had presented in their study. So you make a very good point, actually.
Okay, so I'm trying to take some notes here so we can go back and let me try and add. Andrew, did you have something while I was?
Well, and maybe not for tonight. I'm happy to take this offline, but Robert, did I understand that there was a determination this project or a project of this size would not have an impact on recreational facilities at across HRPT?
Within the DEIS, there is a section on open space and recreation resources. And if I remember, memory serves, that the piece related to us is that it is a negligible impact. There may be people coming north-south, there may be people additional people who use the park, but not in such vast numbers that it would cause sort of overcrowding or trigger the formula. I think it's all formula-based, expected counts of people, those sorts of things. So there were parks, the Highline and Bella Absinthe Park, as I believe, was listed in there as parks that will see significant adverse impacts from this development.
So maybe we can put something in there. I don't want to make it longer, but
I made it longer.
I know you did, but even longer.
Sorry.
That what we're looking for is that the park does an independent assessment. Because I think that's what Andrew was sort of asking, like, have you done your own assessment?
That's it. That's it, Mary. Perfect.
Well, I wasn't necessarily asking if they've done their own assessment. I'd just like to understand who has come to the conclusion that adding this number of
The developers
units and
consultant.
families don't
Suppose that
think it's
would go
going to
then.
impact who
There's
plays at
undoubtedly
Pier
a care
4.
after they get all that.
The other thing to mention tonight, it will have an impact what they do on the Javits Center rooftop. Based on the plan. Will be in shadow.
The rooftop,
Javits Center farm.
right, that's not the advisory council's role, worry. I don't mean to punt that away, but that's beyond our scope. Our scope is specifically tailored to the trust. And our parkland and the estuarium and the estuary and.
I only do it in there because of the one.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. The Highline has a different connection there, but ours is everything on the other side of the highway.
Tammy, would you make it estuarine sanctuary because it is a mapped DEC sanctuary, more than just an estuary
Estuarium.
sanctuary?
Go ahead.
But Leslie just mentioned, you know, thinking not only about what we, about our particular viewpoint is, but also to think about our neighbors also. So, I mean, I understand trying to make it, you know, as targeted as possible, but we are in a neighborhood and it does, you know, it doesn't not impact. Anyway. that's
That
just
is
what I'm
true,
thinking.
but what we're asking is for the trust
Okay.
to get an independent assessment of impacts on the
ours.
park.
Okay.
And we'll work with them if they'd like.
This, so I've added the notes in here. Shade and light as it affects the estuarine sanctuary, aquatic wildlife in the park, connectivity and access between the development and the park to facilitate greater connections, concerns that include the design, concerns that the updated design proposal.
Concerns regarding the lack of active recreation facilities. That's it. It's pretty simple. They have a lot of passive, but they have nothing active. They like the front lawn, but they don't want kids playing ball on it. Excuse me.
Just to be aware of a timeline, we're already in the borough president stage here.
Right,
So this is very quick. I mean, it's,
it can
yes,
go to city council though.
yes.
Like
it will.
whatever study that the HRPT gets going can then be sent to the city council, which would be the right place for it to go.
Right, within the next, in this session.
It's in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
session, yep, so we need to put that in here. Last, yes. Gonna be a therefore be it resolved, we request this independent assessment be done and the city council.
While we're typing here, I just want to say we appreciate the specificity. It helps us.
Can I add some friendly edits?
Please,
In the third, again, third paragraph, HRPAC has concerns and requests HRPT to review. I think we have to say with an independent assessment, we just review.
Provide that exact words.
yeah,
To review, you know. I don't know if we should say, we don't need all those other words after that. Because they are independent.
Conduct an independent assessment. That.
Of course, it's independent.
maybe,
It's, well,
It's ours.
their assessment, so.
Yeah.
That's just not a
Well,
word that's.
I was emphasizing it as far as not just reading what's in
Robert.
the DIS, but look for what's.
We have,
missing and
my
it's-
understanding,
That's why
3
it's a review.
presentations left in about an
Thank you.
hour. If we can maybe wordsmith later, sorry.
so
Yeah.
this is the general gist. I agree with Robert on this one, thank you very much. A motion was made by Wendy in the beginning. Michael, this is the process as we go through.
I'll second.
It's now seconded by Tom, so we'll do a vote by affirmation, right? That means that we're gonna be a yes based on the dialogue that we've heard thus far. Is there anybody who abstains? Michael Wiggins abstaining. Are there any noes? Are there any recusals? Motion passes, letter to be sent, and Wendy, I appreciate the wordsmithing, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, look, I'm all good. All right, so here we go. We've got the next speaker. I think Tara Doss is joining us online today. Oh, hey, you're here. Sorry. I apologize. That was short of me.
No, I was just on if I needed to share a screen, but
I have your
Speak loud.
I have your, okay, so come on over here. So you can be a little bit closer to, I think, a mic, maybe. Or at least we know we're pretty loud on this side.
Like it's a green light.
So,
Shout at that.
yeah, so this is We want to welcome Tara Doss, Assistant VP of Government and Community Relations at New York City EDC. This is about the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, and I will hit the slides shortly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Doss. It's great to see some familiar faces and also a lot of new ones. So I work at EDC's Government and Community Relations Department on our transportation portfolio, which encompasses cruise terminals. So that's what I'm here today to talk about. So I'm sure you've passed by the cruise terminal. It is a huge service. It consists of 3 piers, piers 88, 90, and 92. Right now, 92 is not used at all. It's in very poor shape and cannot be used for anything. Piers 88 and 90 are really the piers that are in use currently. But they are really old. The piers in general date back to the 1930s, when we had, a very different kind of ship coming in. But that same infrastructure has been maintained to continue supporting the cruise ships that you see going in and out now. So even Pier 90 that does see some activity sees very minimal activity in comparison to just how big of a site it is. And so not only is that infrastructure really old, but also this whole site is completely cut off, right? I'm sure if you bike past or walk past it, it's completely gated off. It's sort of this closed off eyesore. And then when passengers are coming in, it can, the passengers coming through can often be crashing into bikes passing by, or they're piling up in that area. And on top of that, we also have had issues with the fact that because of the infrastructure, we can't make the kinds of upgrades that we want to be seeing here. Shore power is a huge piece of that. We know that this community has been a huge advocate of that for many years, and EDC very much wants to bring that technology here. But because of how old this site is, there are a lot of constraints to that. So the master planning process, and we can go to the next slide, I'm sure. So real quick, this is the site that we're talking about. So I was saying piers 88, 90, 92. That's those 3 finger piers south of, or in between Pier 94 where Vornado's coming, and then the Intrepid. And so if we want to go to the next slide. So we're going through this master planning process to really start to think about what is that framework that we want to develop for the future of this site. How can we make sure that given the current infrastructure there and given the current configuration and current needs, as well as the future needs of the terminal, both from that cruise activity standpoint, but also from a community neighbor standpoint, how can this site be better? So what it allows to define what the opportunities are and provide a framework for how to activate and how to phase in different infrastructure upgrades, different investments for the future of it, for the future of this site. So what we talk about is, this is a 30-year horizon. So what this means is we want to be able to look at the next 30 years of the cruise terminal, not just the next 5. And within that, how can we be phasing improvements, and also activating this site a lot better to be better asset in this community. So what it is not, it's not a marketing plan, it's not a business plan, it's not, there's not a rendering at the end of this process, but really what the master plan does is it does inform all of those things. So you might have seen master plans for other areas of the city or other projects where there's kind of a high level overview, and then that kind of gets used to pursue federal funding or to structure requests for proposals for private entities to then respond and provide more specifics about what the future of the site could be.
Sure. Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. So what a master plan allows us to do is be able to have sort of a guiding
vision.
Thank you. Guiding vision for what that could be. So as part of this process, we want to go to the next slide. We do want to hear from the community. this site had, we have been going over the years to the community board to provide updates on things that are happening at the cruise terminal, but have never really had an opportunity to get to formally implement a lot of the feedback that we've been hearing over the years and use that to create an actionable plan. So as part of this process, we have consultants on board. That's what we're calling the project team, in addition to the Economic Development Corporation. Hatch, the name that you see in this corner here, is our main consultant, but they are working with sub-consultants that are experts in this field in terms of cruise design and that kind of thing. We're also consulting cruise operators, cruise lines as well, to better understand what they need in the future of the terminal. We've had conversations with the community board, with elected officials about this, and through the workshops and our survey is really where we want to be broadening our scope and getting all voices in this community involved in this process. Going on to the next slide. So as we see it, the stakeholder engagement part of this is really key to developing a plan for the Manhattan Cruise Terminal that really works for this community. So part of this is making sure that we are having active consultations with folks through the workshops, through the surveys, through conversations like this. We are both sharing what we know about the cruise terminal, what is possible, what are the trade-offs, what are constraints, but also what are the opportunities, and hearing back from you all in terms of what you want to see at this site. And we also want to make sure that we have a shared and common goal with all of this. For example, we know that we are very aware that shore power is a huge important thing for the community. We want that to happen here as well. How can we make sure that we are prioritizing that while also being able to improve things like the traffic condition, like creating opportunities for open space as well, among other upgrades that are needed. And also wanting to make sure that we're being transparent as well. So in tomorrow's workshop, which will be the second workshop of this series, we'll go through some of the constraints that we have. There are things like security concerns. Similarly to an airport, we can't always have all aspects of the cruise terminal open to the public. But there's also opportunities to activate certain areas that have been shut off, as an example. But also being able to be very transparent about what are the different aspects that we are considering as we think about the future of this site. So as I mentioned, all of this is kind of what goes into this process. So tomorrow at the Manhattan Cruise Terminal from 6 to 8 p.m., we're going to host our second workshop. The first workshop was in December and was super high level, mostly wanted to familiarize people with the site, with what a master plan is. There's a similar presentation to tonight, but we also heard, we did a breakout activity with people to understand what their experiences have been with the cruise terminal so far and what their impressions are. Tomorrow's workshop will go into some case studies. So we have some folks who will talk about other cruise terminals in other parts of the world, ones that might have more open space, ones that may have activations for community uses, things that our cruise terminal does not have, to sort of plug in or give some inspiration as to what could be done at this cruise terminal site. And then we'll have some different examples of specific interventions around the room for people to, think about how they would prioritize this intervention or what their questions or concerns for different interventions would be. And then that third workshop is where we'll get into more of what are we looking at, what was the site plan possibly going to look like, what are some scenarios that we could have get that kind of feedback there. And in addition to that, we also have an online survey. The survey questions really mimic more of what was covered in public workshop 1. So it's a little bit more high level, more about the experience walking to and around the terminal. That's really the kind of feedback that is super helpful from the community and what will really influence kind of how the design or the future public activations and pedestrian experience around the terminal will be. So that survey is more in line with that, but that is still open. It says here January 31st, but we will likely be extending it in February. And if we go to the next slide, there is
Before we go to the next slide, can you send us the link for the survey, so
Yeah,
we can
if
distribute
You
to
go to the
everyone.
next slide,
It's in
there's
the
a
trust
QR
report.
code.
The trust report, and I
Separate
emailed it.
one.
Oh, sorry, right before that, a quick
Maybe.
overview
I
of
said that
the
two
public
times.
workshop one discussion topics, so how do people currently interact with it, what are the goals, are there any specific challenges you face with the cruise terminal and the public realm area around it? What are the traffic impacts, and what would you like to see or interact with in the future? Just some examples. Go to the next slide. What we heard, as I mentioned, shore power continues to be a huge priority. But in addition to that, we've heard, you know, improving pedestrian and cyclist safety on 12th Avenue, decongesting entrance, especially when cruise passengers and pedestrians along the greenway are interacting, improving the pedestrian crossings, improving public access, and transit as well. So the next slide, if I remember, should have this part. There we go. So if you want to scan this right here, that is the survey. And yes, I will circulate it around this.
And how long are you gonna leave it open until?
February 18th.
You can snap the QR code from here.
Yes. Do we think we could get the Friends group to maybe distribute that QR code as well as, you know, the general, like, just to have a separate dedicated email so we can get it out as large as we can with the.
We obviously shared it with this group, I think back in December. I've shared it again, it's in this week's stress report. We also were helping support EDC by using some of the wind boards in the park to share information about their events, both north and south of the cruise terminal, try to help make sure that we are getting this, spreading the word out to the local community in the park as well, the actual park users.
Okay. Everybody good? I'll move on to the next slide. That is our last slide. So Tom has his hand up. We'll start with Tom. Tom, wait, before you talk, I'm going to ask you to take that microphone
I
and
did.
put it in
I
your mouth.
think Robert thinks.
Go, Tom.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I was just wondering, thank you for the presentation, Tara. Route 9A is now looking at a redesign. And one of our problems with access to the Hudson River Park is that north of the passenger ship terminals, there are two surface roadways that come into the passenger ship terminals. One of them comes down from Route 9A. If that lane just went straight from the elevated Route 9A into the new terminal, people wouldn't have to come down on the street where it blocks passage and go back up again. So are you coordinating with Route 9A? Because their study is 2 years in the making, because that's a critical element to Clinton Cove in the northern part of the park is the width of the roadway on the north end, and something could be done to reduce it if you work with DOT to be creative, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And I would say that's definitely part of the general plan, but not the master plan component. So in terms of how the different components come to be, the master plan is a little bit more of, as Robert mentioned, a vision. Once we have that, that's kind of what informs the next phase, which is anything related to the actual planning with other agencies in terms of the actual design of certain elements. So depending on kind of where we go from this phase, will determine that. So yes, absolutely, interagency coordination is a huge key piece of improving this site. And so while that hasn't happened right now, that certainly will.
They're both on the same elevation, so it would be very easy. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm wondering, you talk about the community a lot. Have you talked to the maritime community? I know there's a real need for docking for yachts, not that I want to advocate for yachts specifically, but I just had a captain say to me, why can't these people find any place to moor their ships? If those aren't all used by cruise ships, and maybe you have enough need for that right away, but maybe a couple of years down the line, there's not so many cruise ships coming in there. Do you have the flexibility to use it for other things? Does increased traffic by the cruise ships impact other maritime traffic? I think you need to talk to that community too. They're water dependent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there has definitely been some more of from the market research standpoint. So talking to the maritime perspective, not just the cruise industry, but also from the marine freight community. I am not too sure about.
Last mile delivery by water.
Yeah.
It's the new wave.
I'm not 100% sure about yacht usage, but I'll follow up and
Great.
if not, we'll see if there's opportunity.
Other people online or in the room?
Yeah, I was gonna raise something similar to that last comment, just recognize that obviously the Navy or various navies use the cruise terminal in a very nice public way during Memorial Day and other times. And just, potentially there's an opportunity to use it for historic ships or tall ships or other vessels.
So, go ahead, Leslie.
I mean, I don't know,
Speak up.
I don't know what everyone here wants to do, but this is a really good opportunity to to really say how this project is gonna massively affect Hudson River Park. I mean, massively. CB4 has been on this for years and years and years, specifically with the shore power, as Tara kind of mentioned a few times, which the EDC came to us and said that they were gonna promise by 2028, and we all said, hooray, we're gonna get shore power, and then they pulled it back and said, sorry, we're not going to do that. So I think that is a big element because the emissions from those ships come out on the park, and they say one ship parked for one day is the equivalent of 34,000 idling tractor trailers in one day, the emissions. And that greatly affects the park. Another thing we asked for CB4 was, or will ask for, I guess we have, a continuity to marry the Hudson River Park South and North. The kind of like like an esplanade, a new esplanade to marry, so it's kind of seamless through. I think that's another thing that this body can look at as far as advocacy for that. And there's a few other things I think people mentioned, or Tom mentioned, the onboarding and offboarding, but also tractor trailers that are, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but when a ship comes in, which is almost every day, there are tractor trailers lined up in front of the Hudson River Park going north that are just idling overnight a lot of times, and that also affects. So I don't know if we would write a letter or if people consider writing a letter to submit for this, I guess.
It's the pathway that we take is that things that we'd like to see, we should be submitting our notes to the trust and to EDC, both, like we did for BPCA, because this takes effect within the park. It's not just across the street, it's how we engage. So yes, I mean, for me personally, I'd like to see something that's a little bit more, if you're gonna redevelop the whole area, what's sad about the area is that it is only used, in my perspective, when the cruise ships are in. So there's no actual long-term connectivity to the park. And maybe if there was something that was a permanent exhibit of some kind, whether it was a tall ship or a something, that it would provide some sense of connectivity versus just an in and out. Because if we're just talking about shore power, not just, but you understand if we're talking about only berthing for trucks and blue highways and cruise ships, then it will always be a commercial thing for people to go around and not be a destination. So it becomes an impediment to the connectivity in the park for things to do. So that's,
Which includes I don't know if anyone's been there recently, or not recently, the last 20 years. Since 9/11, they have put up barriers, so no one can you can hardly even see the shoreline. And those are, safe to say, antiquated security measures that we hope, and I think they will look into that again, so that is opened to the public and the community and visitors as we have access to that area of the park, to the shoreline and the waterfront.
Wendy, and then somebody else had a hand up online, and then Peter.
Not to necessarily put you on the spot, Leslie, since EDC is here, but What is the reason for not doing the shore power?
For them.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we wanted to know. And we have many robust meetings and conversations.
Well,
Uh,
what's the answer, guys?
So to Leslie's point, yeah, last year we announced long-term agreements, which were agreements with cruise line companies to get them to commit. Not only, I mean, it's a benefit to them because they get guaranteed berthing space. But we also tried to use those as a way to get them to commit to certain priorities of ours, one of those being shore power. So
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
To commit to what?
To different community benefits that we wanted to get out of them. So one of those was connecting to shore power as a commitment. So
You're asking the ships? I'm
Yes,
not clear on
so
who the
long-term
ask is.
agreement-
They have to be able to connect.
So
No,
long.
no, I realize that, but who do you ask?
So long-term agreements are agreements between the city and the cruise lines themselves that get to give the cruise lines guaranteed berthing space, but it's a contract. So what we announced at this 2028 date that we said that we were talking about was a date that we had in those long-term agreements for the cruise companies to commit to shore power. The problem with that though is that we don't have the shore power infrastructure at the site. So part of, and you know, admittedly, this was not a very coordinated effort, but part of the issue over the past couple of years is that we have been progressing with commitments with the cruise lines on one hand, but then on the other hand, we haven't been progressing with the infrastructure upgrades needed to get a shore power system at the Manhattan Cruise Terminal. So right now, there isn't a shore power system for those cruise lines to connect to in the first place. And part of that, in many ways, is because of the infrastructure constraints. So separately from that, we had another study, the feasibility of shore power we were pursuing. And within that, we've been coordinating with different agencies. We were, especially with Con Edison, to understand if we can get electric connections there. And as part of that study, we realized, well, we also need to make sure that we understand what is the real estate needed to put in that infrastructure. So primarily a substation. So to Leslie's point, we are now saying we cannot commit to this 2028 date because there's all these other parts of the puzzle that we need to do, primarily this master planning process, to understand not only where is shore power going, but also how are we reinforcing the piers? Are we even configuring the piers in the same way if that doesn't make sense? So we haven't progressed with shore power because we also don't want to make the infrastructure upgrades to shore power while we have a whole other
Tammy,
cruise terminal system that doesn't make sense.
just so, but you can commit, you could commit to making it a part of the reconfiguration.
Yeah.
That
and
it will definitely be a part of it, and you can commit to making it also a required part of any contract with a cruise ship.
Absolutely, and that's part of it, like the future
not
of the
dead.
cruise terminal
But I mean,
has shore power there. We are absolutely putting shore power there, not only because it is the right thing to do, but also because that is where the future of the industry is. So if we want a cruise terminal to exist, it has to have shore power. So that is absolutely a necessity of this project, of the master plan, as well as.
thank you.
Are the ships
All right,
currently equipped?
hold on, because I've got people online with hands, I've got people in the room, sorry,
That's
Mary,
okay.
you're gonna go after Leslie and then Mary and then Tom, and then I think I lost Peter.
Peter was looking for it, but Peter, I have to keep muting you because we can hear you muffling in the background. So if you raise your hand, we'll call on you.
Just a few things. One, that CB4 is asking for, just so you guys are aware of the reference. Asking, since this is so important, that we don't want to wait 30 years for this stuff, the whole thing, that there are parallel tracks. Like you said, we know shore power has to get in there and has to get in there quickly. Their own study, the Jacobs study, which we call the Jacobs study, has said that shore power there is absolutely feasible. And Con Ed has said that this is not a hard lift necessarily. It's not like they have to reinvent the grid to get shore power there, which is all very good signs. So what we are asking is that, or we are asking that at least the EDC look at parallel tracks. Yes, if they want to redo the whole pier and it's great and awesome, and that's one thing. But in the meantime, you can build infrastructure to get there, shore power to get there as they're doing this other big reconfiguration.
Okay, we're gonna go to Peter and then Mary. Peter, go.
Hi there. So full disclosure, I'm a member of the board of the Waterfront Alliance, and so just wondering if this project is going to be evaluated under the Waterfront Alliance's Waterfront Edge Design Guidelines, if that's part of the plan.
I have to get back to you on that. I don't think the master plan is. There may be other components that come with them, but I will get a real answer to that.
Okay.
All right, Mary?
So my question is, are the ships currently equipped to connect with shore power if you put it in?
Not all. That 2028 date is an industry-led date. So there's this thing called CLIA. I forget I think it's Cruise Lines International Alliance. And as a conglomeration, they have 2028 as their date for all cruise lines to be shifting their new builds over to shore power. Right now, I don't have the exact breakdown of which ships are, but it's
Not
not all.
necessary.
Yeah.
Answer next.
Okay, Tom, and then we're gonna have to wind this up because we have another presentation, but Leslie made a proposal while you guys were all chatting, so, Tom?
Yes, thank you. Another reason to coordinate with Route 9A, there is a huge Con Ed power substation directly across the street. So Route 9A, as it's planning its redesign, should plan for the trunk to come across to whatever you're building so that their design includes access to you and maybe shed the cost, because maybe they could pay for some of it with DOT money.
Which reminds me to ask, I guess, is EDC in any way involved in the Route 9A working group?
I'm not too sure.
Then we punt that back to the trust. So the trust is.
We have shared that the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, along with a number of other folks, the advisory council itself, were major stakeholders with state DOT as part of it. So, but we are not the determining major, so you can't punt it to us because I can't change it. We have flagged it for them. Certainly EDC has contacts with state DOT if they would like to be involved.
Okay. Anybody else online have anything else they want to add? Anybody in the room? So Leslie made a proposal that as the Hudson River Park Advisory Council, we should be, not only as individuals going back and filling out the survey, but that we should also be forming our own opinions and sending a letter to the trust and EDC of here are things that we would like to see, things that we are concerned about, to be officially on record, because while it's lovely that Tara's here and taking auditory, like everything else, you gotta either fill it out in the survey or send a letter to be counted as public comment. Correct?
It all counts, but
Yeah.
yes, it is very helpful if we get formal documents.
So, and when do we have to do that by? I saw the February, I mean,
For the letters,
yes.
yeah, the sooner the better. I would say by the end of February.
Super. So I'm just gonna go over some highline. We'll vote on it, and if that's okay, then we'll have to get the letter written. I'm just gonna go over a highline of what some people have said. That they'd like to see shore power historic ships berthing for other than the, berthing for boats when the cruise ships are not in. A new esplanade, new connections in and off for pedestrians. And connections to the bike path and the sidewalks. On and off boarding is very important. The tractor trailers solving some kind of issues if there was a way to do that. Connectivity. Did I?
Coordinating closely with Route 9A regarding both access and electrical connection.
Right. And then from my point was to add add something. So there, it's a public asset that attracts more than just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
vote. So it fits in. Okay, is that good? And Wendy's gonna take the lead on crafting the letter on that. Does anybody have anything else that we should be adding in? Does anybody want to see an additional theater on the pier? I mean, come on, let's think creatively. Are we looking for outdoor movies over there? What are we looking for over on the Marina Tower?
Oh, wow.
Little Island too.
Great idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the crazy thoughts. You get people who come on and off and we're not doing anything to capture them at all there. Anything else? Anybody?
Perhaps adaptive reuse of the roof spaces when they're not being used, because those are huge, flat, open spaces that could have events or theater or.
Can I suggest, Madam Chair, that probably anything else that anybody wants to suggest, anybody else would object to, so just like send it
Yeah,
along.
because we're
Or make the edit.
envisioning,
So we can move on.
think big, think bold, and send it to the AC. All right. Thank you, Tara, very, very much. Thank you, everybody. And we're gonna move on to the next topic on the agenda, which is the presentation from West 29th to 46th Street, Tom Adams and Marvell.
Okay.
I'm like Marvel movies, sorry.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I lost a contact lens walking up here, so I'm standing really close to the screen. I'm extremely nearsighted, so you're all just blurs right now. But so my name is Tom Adams. I'm a senior project manager with the Hudson River Park Trust. I was a project manager for Pier 26 Science Playground, Gansevoort Peninsula, and the beginning of Pier 97, and then I passed that off to a colleague when I got a little overloaded. So I'm really excited to be trusted with this project, 29th to 46th Street. We picked a great design team led by Marvel Architects and Landscape Architects. I'm joined by Che Wang, who's somewhere up here on the screen, up there on the upper left, who I'm going to introduce. So I guess if we could go to the first or next slide in the presentation.
Sorry, give me 1 sec to get to your slides. I'm not used to being slide master. That's usually my friend over here. All right, gotcha. I'm ready for you. Close that one. Robert has me working for my money here. Let's see if I've got it right. Not sure. Let's get that.
So while this is being loaded up, just real quick, what I'm going to be showing is I'm just going to be giving you a quick overview of the overall project area, which you all probably know backwards and forwards, and just give a summary of a recent last week public information and workshop that we had, which I recognize some of you were in attendance, and talk about the steps after that.
Sorry, give me just 1 second. Ta-da.
Okay, there we go. So if we could just go to the next slide. So just obviously to acquaint everyone where we are, this is really the last unimproved section of Esplanade and Hudson River Park. Next slide, please. So we're running, it's about 1.1 miles between 29th Street and West 46th Street. And I'm going to give a tour going from south to north, but I should emphasize that, you know, this is a multi-year design contract. And what we're trying to do is give the community some early wins and some early deliverables. So we're actually starting design at the north end where we have a lot more control over the site. And we think we can deliver a first phase or initial phase of improvements sooner than later. So next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce Che, who's just going to give a quick overview of Marvel and the design team. So Che, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, thank you, Tom, and good evening, everyone. I know, you know, it's we're short on time, so I'll be quick. And yes, you know, Marvel or Marvel, you know, either works. We are not the superhero movie studio. We're a new group of New York-based landscape architects and architects who are, you know, deeply invested in the public realm of our city and our communities. We specialize in complex urban environments, such as, you know, the one that we're working on right now, the waterfront Esplanade. Next, please. And you know, we're not alone. We're not only supported by the trust and you all, but also a robust group of waterfront experts and engineers. Just here on the slides, just listing a few of them. And next, please. And like I said, you know, we call New York home. This is where most of our staff members live and work, and where also the majority of our planning and built work are located. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that specifically on the waterfront, as you can see on this map, our team members have worked on, you know, the Hudson River waterfront, worked on the East River, and as well as the Harlem River. So we're familiar with, you know, our environment and especially the waterfront here. And you know, I'm gonna hand it back to Tom to give everyone more information on the project, and then we'll give a report, an update on how the workshop went a few weeks ago.
Timer is set for myself, so I'm keeping myself on track. So we're going to start from the south going to the north. So next slide, please. So this is kind of what we're trying
to finish it up right now.
Whoop. Okay,
Keep going.
Okay, so this is the completed section of Park South 29th Street. So obviously what we're trying to do is create a more park-like space in this area that matches this. We're now in the heliport and gateway area. You all know about this site backwards and forwards. There obviously are a lot of moving parts here and a lot of unknowns at the present time. So while this is definitely part of the project scope, and we'll be back to talk about it, this was not part of this today's design discussion. Moving forward, next slide, please.
That's it.
Oh, sorry. So this is the maintenance and compost facility for HRPT. So obviously this is going to remain in place, but perhaps shifted, optimized to make better use of the space, make it more of an educational component, perhaps, moving forward. And then also the Esplanade in front of the compost facility is going to be redesigned to match more what we have elsewhere in the park. Again, part of the later phase of design. We have the interim pickleball courts just to the north. We'll be looking at this area as well. Continue, please. And then also we have, this is one area of sort of naturally forming habitat. We have great ecology on the team who's going to be looking at habitat improvements in this area. So we're excited what we can offer here. This will all go through the DEC and environmental permitting process. Next slide, please. And then also the upland area next to the habitat area is going to be improved to match design standard in the rest of the park. Pier 76 frontage. So I want to stress Pier 76 itself is not part of this project, but obviously the area in front, we see opportunities for interim improvements that we obviously have a relatively limited budget, but improvements that are going to make this area more welcoming, connect better to the north and to the south. So maybe shifting fence lines, looking at landscape improvements. And then Pier 78 and 79, obviously, this is another complicated area that we'll be coming back to discuss with all of you. We're getting conversations with City DOT and EDC and the private property owner. We don't know this is a complicated site, but we see there are opportunities to make this feel more park-like as well and safer for everyone. We then move forward to Pier 81 and 83. So this is the beginning of the start of the workshop area and the initial phase of design that we talked about last week. So this is the area in front of the Circle Line. And obviously it's a very heavily utilized area. And then also targeted areas of Pier 84. We've recognized that there are areas at Pier 84 that while they're completed sections of the park are really not optimized and used to their best potential. So next slide, please. So current activities and next steps. Next slide, please. The team has been very busy since we brought them on board doing site visits, topographic surveying, marine inspections, and starting engagements with the various agencies, tenants, agency partners, community, and stakeholders. Moving forward, please. So as I mentioned, we're really starting from north to south. So the pink area is the area that we've met most recently with the community about last week. And then the area in blue in front of Pier 76 and 78 and 79 is following a little bit behind, and we'll be back to talk about that soon. So this is the January 13th workshop area. And if we can go forward, I'm going to just talk about how the workshop went. So we broke up the site into 5 zones. The first off being the area in front of Pier 84, both in front of and in back of the building. If you could just go back once, I just want to just go back.
I'm trying to go ahead.
Then the area, zone 2 is the area basically just to the south of the concession building. Area 3 and 4 is the area between 81 and 83. And then the last area 5 is between Pier 79 and Pier 81. So if we can move forward.
Oops, wrong way. Apologies. Fine, there you go.
So we had, we went to the community, and obviously feel strongly these are the goals that we want to create a greener, more welcoming park space, improve the Esplanade to Hudson River Park standards elsewhere in the park, seamlessly connect spaces north and south, enhance safety and reduce conflicts between pedestrians, bikes, and vehicles, integrate Hudson River Park design with our tenants' access and other operational requirements, as well as our partners, city DOT, et cetera, and apply sustainable and green design practices throughout. So next slide, please. So project area 1 that we're looking at is within, this was part of the workshop. This is the area, the water play area at the east end of Pier 84 that has not been a very successful area. It's not very well utilized. So we see that as a targeted area that we can do some improvements that we wanted to get input on program. Some more pictures of just the site and some of its deficiencies. Again, you're all probably very familiar with this site already. We're also looking at the picnic area and the areas surrounding the water play area, not the dog run, not the community garden, but how we can improve site furnishings, plantings, making the area feel more green and more welcoming. Next slide, please. Then also we're looking at, just a little, it's hard to see, the area in front of the concession building, which is kind of a paved and sort of underutilized, rather unwelcoming area. We've challenged the team along with community input to look at how we make this area feel more welcoming, more of a respite, and something that's more popular. And then we're also looking at the area on the other side of the concession building that's just an expansive paved area to see how we can sort of make that area work better and feel more welcoming and feel more like part of the park. Then the project area 4, we're looking at the area between Pier 81 and 83. So obviously we've got existing access into Pier 81 and 80 to Circle Line who use the site. So we need to maintain that. We've met with them already to just talk about how things operate right now and to make sure we're properly coordinated. Next slide, please. And then again, just some pictures. We obviously have a lot of Circle Line users entering the site. So we're trying to just kind of see how the site operates. Next slide, please. And then these 2 pictures just kind of, as you all well know, just kind of give an indication of what the design team has to work with. A site that's very heavily used and very crowded in the summer, but can feel kind of barren and desolate in the winter. So how do we make an area that works well and looks great and feels like part of the park year round? And then obviously the area between Pier 71 and Pier 81, we have a lot of temporary finishes, railings that need improvements. We've tried to do a lot of temporary improvements, screening improvements in this area to make it feel more welcoming. But now we have a design team who's going to be able to look at permanent improvements. So we told the community we wanted to make sure that there are considerations that they need to consider. This is not an anything goes kind of exercise. So the concession building will remain. That is not part of this project. The water fountain play area, which is very popular, that also is going to remain as part of this project. Next slide, please. The New York State Bikeway will also remain. That is not part of this project. We are going to be coordinating closely with State DOT, obviously, on any potential, bikeway impacts due to construction, but that is not part of this project. Next slide, please. And then we are, as for the workshop area, the vehicular access area into Circle Line was not part of we were not asking for, sort of design ideas for this area. We do have T.Y. Lin, formerly Sam Schwartz, who was on board, who is doing a very detailed analysis of how this whole area works to try to make it work better for all users, improve safety, improve compatibility between all users. But that was not part of this initial study. We also looked at, told people they have to consider the esplanade widths. And in this area, this is actually a very good thing to have. We have a pretty generous widths in this area, 85 feet, 62 feet. This is where my nearsightedness is coming in, 85 and 130 feet in this area. So we have a lot of opportunities. One of the reasons we're starting in this area is we just have more control over this particular site. But it is also one of our areas where we can give I think the biggest bang for the buck in terms of giving back a green, welcoming park space. Next slide, please. And then while we have a wide area here, we wanted the community to weigh in on program, what they want to see in terms of active play, passive, but obviously this can't be everything for everyone. So we wanted people to realize we do need to provide a minimum 20-foot esplanade, which is what we provide elsewhere in the park, so to factor that into the widths that we're looking at. Next slide, please. And then this is the workshop exercise that we put on the table. And I'm going to have Che walk through the workshop exercise, but we had about 70 members of the public in place. We did a pretty robust outreach program. I think we broke up into 12 tables of, I don't know, right? I think 12 tables of
eight tables.
So
maybe.
we had a lot of PT and Friends staff as well who were walking around joining in. So Che, I'm going to let you jump in and maybe talk a little bit how the workshop went and some of your findings, your initial findings.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tom. So yeah, it was a cold Monday night, but we were joined by like Tom said, a huge crowd, great turnout in the Intrepid Museum, and had a very engaging crowd. And on each of the tables, we have this map shown on the screen, printed big, with markers and stickies, and really ask each of the tables to write down and draw and rip up a piece of paper or put a sticky on, and just share their thoughts, in any way that they feel comfortable with, and have each of the table, we had a 30-minute discussion going zone by zone. There were 5. So very specific discussions about each area. And then at the end of that 30-minute session, we asked each table to report back. So everyone heard what other tables were discussing and what's on everyone's mind collectively before the meeting was adjourned. And if you go to the next slide, we're still compiling the hundreds of comments that were made that night. But this is, a kind of a snapshot of an overview, kind of the overarching comments that were shared among most participants. That was, the need for shade. As you could see, you all know the area very well. Much of it does not have much shade, and you're out, by the waterfront, where shade is critical for your comfort and for a longer stay, really. A greener park space with more planting, more trees, more places to sit, clear signage, clear direction, clear orientation of the spaces, clear paths, so that people don't get lost. We have a lot of visitors here. And in terms of safety, improved lighting in the evening, and really overall just trying to align with the rest of the park system that is very well loved. And like I said earlier, we're creating a summary report where we'll share with the trust, and about it, it will include a more in-depth breakdown of how the workshop went and what we've heard and learned.
I'll be reviewing the findings, and then those findings will be on our website, just transparent what we're hearing from the community. And that's really going to help guide us start concept design in terms of program, what we want to see in this area. And that's it for now. I tried to breeze through as fast as I could, so.
I, for one, am gonna say, wow. Not only for, thank you for the speed, but 70 people on a cold winter night for a robust, that's a great turnout. I mean, based on what I've seen from public meetings, they are. Congratulations, that's really great. I'm gonna go in the room first, Andrew, and then Tom online, and then I'll come back for.
So I'll second the wow. Exciting project. I don't know if you think of things in terms of square footage, but what is this? I have 2 or 3 very quick questions. Size of the space that you're working with. Second, I know we're not in the design phasing yet, but there must be some budgeting consideration in the early stages. And then 3, I guess Connie just left. I was going to ask her if there were elements of this project that might dovetail with the HBS program that she was talking about.
So your first question is about square footage of these areas. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have those. I have the widths. Che, I don't know if offhand you know the square footages. I know you've generated that.
Or just in aggregate, if you have a ballpark sense of how much.
In the first area, in the focus area 1, that what we went to the community with.
If we start with that, yeah.
I don't.
That's fine.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can definitely get that to you.
Comparable areas of the park, Esplanade areas where folks may.
Yeah, I mean, it's bigger. I mean, we've got a typical Esplanade area. It's like, for instance, we looked at things, some of our, and Che, you can jump in here, some of our cutouts that we brought to people to put on the area to see what could fit. I mean, we could fit our 20-foot Esplanade, say with a lawn in the Pier 81, 82 area. We can fit some flexible play spaces in Esplanade. So we definitely have a lot of space. In terms of that water play area, it's probably more typically the size of, say, adult fitness or a very small playground, not a full-size playground. The area in front of the building, I mean, certainly we have room for an Esplanade with plantings, sort of like a woodland walk kind of thing. I mean, this is all just things that community members were talking about. So we have a lot of flexibility here, unlike some. Your next was
the overall, sorry, Tom, just to kind of supplement, it's about 1,000 feet long by, on average, between 60 to 80 feet wide, is the size of the area.
So we have a generous area. We have a lot of different program that could be considered, so which is one of the reasons why we needed glad we got a robust community involvement session. In terms of budgeting, the overall budget for the entire project is from the entire 1.1 all in is $66 million. That includes soft costs, design, and construction management. So we're certainly recognizing there are a lot of it, and that also includes, bulkhead repairs and sort of the unsexy parts of this project. So we're certainly challenging the team to come up with some cost-effective treatments. The sky is not the limit, so we've tried to make that clear. It's also why I'd say areas like Pier 76, we're trying to look at cost-effective interim improvements that if they are impacted later by Pier 76 construction or, not the end of the world. So we are cognizant of that as planning progresses.
All right, Tom, and then Peter, and then back to the room.
Yes, thank you. I thought it was a great presentation, and you're on the right path for sure. Setting the parameters of the project, who whacked out that huge area? You're not coordinating with MTA, with Route 9A on the size of that area, because you asked Sam was very good to look at this stuff, to look at safety and compatibility. Did you look at him to give you a little more open space?
We're
So would that be rationalized a little smaller so that we have a larger park space and less bus parking and that type of thing?
going to be meeting, we haven't done so yet, but we will be meeting with the MTA. Sam Schwartz is definitely looking at how the site operates now, how it's been, and to see how it can be more functional to work better. And so maybe there's the opportunity for some more park space. I mean, that area, the way we see it, is going to remain. So for purposes of the public meeting, we wanted input on programs. So that whole area is not disappearing. So as we move into concept design, we're certainly hoping that we have some more space that we can work with in that area, that we can still meet all of the operational needs of MTA and Circle Line, and make it work better, make it be safer, more logical, and hopefully have more green space in the park. But
And
that's
one other ask perhaps is you're talking about the need for shade in the other place. That MTA bus site is, like being an institution somewhere. You could have a beautiful bus terminal, bus depot there that provides people with shade and amenities, and so the park might encourage that, although you can't control that, because it would be to the benefit of the park and our park users. Thank you.
Peter, you're next, and then Leslie. And then we have to wind this up, so we've got 5 minutes, because then I have to try and squeeze Robert.
I'll be fast.
Yep. Peter?
All right, this is Peter. I'll be quick. I was at that session last week. It was indeed a robust session. You guys did a great job, so thank you. I'm just going to repeat one thing that I mentioned at the meeting, which is that my office looks right out on that area. Just for everyone in the room, I'm Peter Rebright with New York Cruise Line, Circle Line, and so we of course have a very vested interest in this. And my office looks right out on that area, and I see the huge cacophony of uses out there that all intersect at once. I don't envy your task of trying to untangle that and figure out how it tangles back together again. But what I would encourage you all to do is, when you're coming up with these solutions, not only having one-on-one conversations, but the more you can have everybody in the room at once, because each use does impact another use. And you might be talking with one and think you're coming up with a solution that's going to affect 5 other things. So I'll just encourage a kind of holistic approach here rather than one-on-one.
we know we're not going to be designing this in a vacuum. So we started our initial data collection, trying to interview tenants, but we know this is just the start. We'll be back soon. We're not going to progress without getting buy-in.
Leslie?
Mine just quickly, it was a robust, it was great, by the way, the session. If you wanted to share with somebody about like what were your takeaways from it? Like what did the public ask for? Just a few things. I mean,
sure. We talked about it. I don't know if we can pull back up the presentation to kind of. I will say that
you don't have to pull it back up.
But I mean, basically, it's kind of what we all think. People want a more green space. They want more shade. They want more logical connections. They want it to feel welcoming, improved seating opportunities. We heard a lot of different ideas for program, everything from adult fitness to some flexible play space, a lot of emphasis on all age uses, just making general the site feel more welcoming, shady, greener, more welcoming. That's the big takeaway.
The big picture.
So Marvell there are hundreds of comments at all 8 different tables. They were full of comments on various things. Marvell's doing a total summary of putting them all together, categorizing, putting it together into like a report for us, which we will share with all of you. We'll do a presentation on it. There's more to come. They've done just scratch the surface of it.
Perfect. And yes.
Excuse me? No building construction is part of this, so it's just our budget limitations. We've got too much to do.
Wendy?
I'm just wondering about the involvement of some of the tenants there, like Circle Line and all.
We've met with Circle Line a couple of times just to understand how their operational needs are working. We had a Zoom meeting followed by just a walkthrough with the design team and Circle Line attendees. And we're going to be doing that with all of our tenants just to make sure that we understand how everything is working. So we're not designing, we definitely don't want to be designing something in a silo. So we want it to work through.
And with that, I want to say thank you very much, and thank you for your colleague online. Really appreciate and look forward to more updates as you get all the feedback and reporting and things like that. So super grateful. Thank you very much. We have so much to process.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, it's 8:29. Robert, you have literally 10 minutes. But before you go into your 10 minutes, people need to remember and note, as you'll see, new business and future. March 31st and May 20th are the next 2 meetings. We have not heard back from BPCA on the DEIS for the FEIS. We'll be talking about Sail Forth. Mary, thank you very much for helping us get that coordinated for March. If you have any other suggestions, please let us know, and we'll hear a safety update at that point. So Robert, you have 10 minutes and then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to mention that if we open, because we have those open seats, we will have.
Sorry, can we speak up? We can't hear.
I'm so
Membership.
sorry. Membership, we have open seats. An updated letter went out soliciting applications. Please, anyone who has suggestions, reach out to community groups that you think might be appropriate. The deadline is the 15th of next month. We will evaluate them. We will invite people if they want to make a presentation, and then we will vote on them.
Perfect. Tom, sorry. Robert, take it away, please.
Thank you very much.
Or
I'm gonna
Tom.
claim 15 minutes, and that's only as I'm doing it. People ask me to bring more guest stars and more folks in the trust speaking. I'm taking Chris McGann's 5 minutes and Rob Rodriguez. He also had some time on there over there. We know what I can't do that. I can't do this in 15 minutes if I have to have multiple presentations. So I'm gonna be quick, but it's gonna be me. We at Pier 97, we've had a lot of good work moving forward. Folks should go up and see. We've done a lot of work right on the frontage. So it still looks like it's deeply under construction, but it should all be clearing up soon. It's because we're doing a lot of pavers. There's a lot of hang-ups with DEP and Con Ed and the infrastructure underground for that. We are expecting we had to pause work because of extremely low temperatures of the past week and a half. We expect to be opening the public restrooms this spring when it gets warmer. We are sort of still working with the DOB on our TCO. We talked about West 29th Street to 46th Street, so I'm going to skip all of that. As previously reported, the trust recently hired Hudson Meridian to oversee the range of capital maintenance work that at Pier 40. That includes things like the fire suppression, the garage, loading dock, and upper capital maintenance work. People remember that New York City rolled out an extensive number of new rules for parking garages after the collapses a few years ago. Pier 40 being a massive parking garage requires a huge amount of work. This is every possible crack that's like a quarter or larger requires us to document that we addressed it. It's a huge amount of work, and we're bringing them in to help us oversee all of that and the coordination among the many folks doing it. With that, and I'm going to take this from Rob, who is otherwise going to ask to speak about this. Folks will notice the frontage of Pier 40. We've had a pipe burst leak. Unclear, don't quote me on that language, over this weekend. Rob and his team worked extensively this weekend, and we should all apologize to him for ruining his weekend, along with the many other workers who have to deal with it. So we have leaking water on the frontage of Pier 40. There are going to be some detours as we rip up the concrete, we get into the ground to try to identify the problem is, figure out how to fix it. It may include water shutoffs at Pier 40 and others. We're bringing in portalets for some of our field users, for some of our own staff who will also have to used them. And we'll be coordinating with everyone as those detours come. It's obviously a very complicated site. The frontage of Pier 40, folks know, between the parking garage, the buses for kids, pickup, drop off, New York Water Tours, our other users, VCB and others, really requires a lot of coordination. So it's something that folks will be learning more about. Certainly our field users will be hearing more from our team as we figure out how or if it's going to affect the fields. I'm hoping for an overnight shut off so that I don't have to use a portalet at work, but so fair enough. We have hired a marine, our board will be approving at our next board meeting, a marine contractor for park-wide marine work. These includes many inspections of piles and decks and other things, bulkheads that we have to do every year. This year is going to be a 5-year contract. This is a sort of capital maintenance that is both very expensive and totally unseen for the vast majority of people, unless you're paying attention to where the barges are. The work will be scaled based on what work we can do, what work we can afford, and across the park. Each one will have to have its individual regulatory approvals and others, but this is overall, we're bringing in a contractor to be able to help support us on that faster and for longer term. With that, we have also done, we are also bringing on a park-wide construction management service. This is someone who can help speed procurement while overseeing the various range of contractors that do it. Any one work, you may need electrician, you may need carpenters, you may need roofers. There's a range of folks you may need to be able to do any specific job. Having a park-wide contract management services allows us to speed that process and have someone who is overseeing that work in addition to our own staff, lifting some of the burden. Some of the projects that we have identified that we expect to be able to use this for, and this is why I'm saying this now, include things like the replacement of synthetic turfs at Pier 25 and 46, and repairs to the roof at the Pier 25 mini golf, Pier 66, Pier 84, and Pier 96 boathouses. Like the marine construction, this work is phased. It will go on as we have money. Each individual project will be coordinated with our tenants, with their users, with everyone else along the way. But this having the overall construction manager will allow us to do it faster when we do have the money. Speaking to the conversations we've had earlier, we do have occasionally ask our elected officials, hopefully some of whom are still on, for money to fund this type of work, boathouses, turfs, those sorts of things, playground reconstructions. So when you do get the ask from us, we'd hope that you would do it. We have the capability to implement. We are launching with Evergreen Architects a public art repair program. So we have a number of public art pieces within Hudson River Park. They do require repair and care over the years. We have a new contractor who's able to help us do this. Based on their recommendations, we're moving forward with the repairs to the mural in the Pier 40 lobby, the LGBT memorial, the base for the Apple structure located near Pier 46, and professional cleaning for the two large tables at 29th Street. They only put that name in there to trip me up. With this, we also have some additional work that we're doing, hopefully before the warm season, which is repair the shade structures at Pier 45. The existing fabric is about 20 years old, which is an extraordinary life, well past its useful life for that type of fabric. So they has been ripped, and we're excited to be able to do it. With it, we're going to be able to do some minor sear repairs to the structure themselves. This is in addition to us having done some of the work on both the decking and electricity along Pier 45 earlier in last year. So we are really trying to go back and do a lot of that capital maintenance on an ongoing basis. Here, I'm going to slow down. So we have, and I sent this out to two folks. I believe the Department of City Planning released a draft scope of work for potential rezoning and applications for special permits at what they are calling DeWitt Clinton Park North, which is 801 11th Avenue, which is on 11th Avenue, between West 55 and West 56, and 629 West 54th Street. So that's at the corner between 53rd and 54 and 55. So it is the draft scope includes the possibility of a transfer or purchase of transferable developments from Hudson River Park. It is within the Hudson River Park Special District, our transfer area. We do not have business terms with them. All we have done is agreed to negotiate. City Planning was interested in moving forward with the draft scope, so that's the environmental assessment for the buildings. In that scope, because we do not have an agreement and have not come to any business terms, they include a range of possible sites from which we could transfer development rights. We have not selected any specific sites from which we would do so, because again, we have not yet agreed to do so. I shared the information on scoping. I know CB4 has held a meeting on it and is moving through it. This sort of thing would require not only us coming to business terms, it would require the ULURP process with all of its public process. In addition, because it would be transferable developments and the piece connected directly to Hudson River Park, which the zoning apart would require our significant action process as well as approval from our board of directors. It's a long process. What we have said is that money from this type of sale could be used towards the creation of new public open space at Pier 76, of which, as we have said, we are looking for a substantial amount of money to help fund the public portions of that pier. I will stop here for questions on this.
Let's not ask questions about the air rights. If anybody thinks they're going to ask any questions on that, because it's not right. We got plenty of time on that. Anybody else have anything? Robert, keep going.
Okay. And this one is a tough one. So the trust recently had to make the very difficult decision to terminate the longstanding permit held by P3, which is a youth nonprofit has had interior space on the south side of Pier 40. They had very significant permit violations related to significant unauthorized construction in the pier. We did not have any plans to make changes to P3 status before this. It was not something we've made lightly. It is something we are very well aware of, certainly from permits and others that we expected, that we would receive a lot of questions and specific pieces about. We discovered this last May. It was immediately before the summer season. We worked with Pier with P3 to not disrupt the summer season, understanding that parents and others book and rely on those much earlier than when we had to make this call. We are committed. We have since allowed them to finish their summer season, winter, and now have agreed to allow them to complete their spring season. They will conclude their use of the interior space after the spring season. We have said that we will continue to allow them to use the Pier 40 fields for this summer and beyond for the camps and programs, as many of our other leagues, or frankly, all of our other leagues on our fields do. We haven't made decisions on what the interior space may be in the future. What we have made the commitment that we are not looking to introduce a commercial use into it. We are also interested in trying to continue that use for the sport of youth sports in particular in some capacity. Exactly what that capacity is, it's something that we are interested in engaging our community on, certainly community board too, our leagues and the advisory council, and we'll be kind of talking with folks on how we can best sort of engage in that conversation on what the future use of the space is.
And I know there are hands up, so who's going first, Wendy?
So P3 is losing its office space, but can still use the fields for the program?
There's a permit for the interior space, which is separate than its field permits, and so it will continue to be able to use the fields for its permits as it has.
And this wasn't a surprise to them, I imagine, because you had discussions prior? I mean, can you enlighten us on?
I don't want to necessarily, up until now, we have sort of kept this, and the reason we have not shared this before is up until we terminated the permit, it was really a landlord-tenant matter. I don't really want to get into the specifics about what it was or the other pieces of it. I know, I expect that CB2 and Daniel, I think you have this, I think CB2 is looking to try to have, or Susan.
March 5th.
Yes.
At 6:30.
Yeah. It will be on the agenda for the Parks Committee in March.
I don't mean to jump over people who had their hands up, and mine will go up in a second, but I just want to clarify part of the answer to your question. The space that they're losing is partially administrative space, but it's also functional recreation space that the leagues have used, or that P3 has provided to leagues and other community members for 20 plus years, 25.
I'm well familiar, yeah.
So it's not just office space, there's functional recreational
I know.
space that goes down.
Go ahead.
My name is Pete Marino. Many of you probably don't know me. I've represented Greenwich Village Little League on the advisory council for about 4 or 5 years now. I've probably kept a low profile. But yeah, I'm here today in person to register our league's significant concerns and unhappiness with the way that this has been handled in P3. Like Andrew mentioned, it's not just offices, it's batting cages, training rooms, meeting rooms, storage space that not only P3 uses for its own programs that it offers to the community at large, but our league, Andrew's league, we utilize P3 coaches, facilities year long. I mean, not just we use it during the winter, we use it during the spring and summer for indoor and nighttime practices, staging events for ourselves, for our league. So it's definitely a plus that they're not losing their field space, but it is crippling to P3 and to the leagues to lose that interior space for any length of time, really. We had a lot of concerns also about how it was done. And I know that, this is not the forum to look into the nitty-gritty of it and the specifics of the violations that happened, but we think there's definite factual basis for this not to have been a termination like this. And the last thing I'll say, because I know we're kind of running out of time, is that one of the things that hit me most when this started developing and percolating is that, in my time listening quietly on advisory council meetings, I've seen a lot of talk and activity around diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and being conscious of making the park accessible, relevant, engaging to people of all cultures and backgrounds and income levels. And what we're seeing here is the trust essentially kicking out a small nonprofit that is materially run by one Dominican man who is, has not only ties to our leagues, he's interwoven in the fabric of the downtown community in terms of the affordable after-school summer and vacation programs that he's put on, ties to the Dominican community here and in the Dominican Republic in terms of sending back charitable donations and bringing young people here to use their baseball skills and cultivate them into a career. So it's concerning to me that it's being handled this way, because I think that P3 is an organization that the trust should help thrive and not just sort of kick to the curb because it's inconvenient or because some things happened, which I think are still up for debate as to what happened, but it should be handled in a more constructive way than this.
Robert, you have any comment or add?
I don't think this is necessarily the place of the forum for us to be able to get in the debate in it. I will re-say this was not a decision that we got too lightly. This was not something that we did offhand. It was not because we had plans for P3 or its space otherwise. This was not a fight we were looking to pick. This was not on the trust agenda for this year. This was not something that we were frankly prepared to have to engage in. The scale and scope of the unauthorized construction and that those impacts were significant enough that it was not something the trust feels it can responsibly ignore. So I certainly, I know there will be more discussion on this going forward, but it is something that we frankly regret that we have to be here. It is not something where we feel we have an alternative.
Yeah. Andrew?
So I won't add to what Peter very eloquently expressed, other than to say, I have no doubt this is complicated. I have no doubt it was a difficult decision. This is a tenant who's been here for 20 plus years. What I'm wrestling with, and Downtown Little League had a very active weekend for about 300 of our families. And for every question I had about the upcoming league, I had 6 or 7 about what's happening with P3 at Pier 40. The community doesn't understand a tenant-landlord dispute. They don't understand renovation violations. I'm not discounting what you're saying. I'm saying the community is struggling to really understand what's happening. And similar to the discussion we had earlier about this council's role on EDC and the master plan and trying to create communication and message and express a view, I think this is an issue that warrants similar consideration, in addition to what the member organizations are taking on themselves. This will be a very loud and it is a loud and controversial subject right now.
I do want to just add on this one, youth sports in particular, sports overall, but youth sports in particular are our bread and butter. We host hundreds of thousands of kids and families on Pier 40 and our other fields every year. It's something that we are very invested in. We do know, we have learned more, but we do know that this will have an impact on the other leagues, Downtown Little League, GVLL, and others. And we are absolutely interested and into trying to figure out ways to help sort of mitigate what that impact can be as we go through this transition. And we acknowledge it is going to be a transition for folks, and we are happy to try to see what we can do to support folks as we go through it. We want our leagues to be successful. We want our youth leagues to be successful, and it is again deeply unfortunate that we are where we are today.
So I think that this will be a topic that Isaac Daniels next, and I think he has the last.
Actually,
word.
could a community member ask a question about the last subject?
If you can wait just a minute, somebody in the room's been recognized first, and then yes, I'd be happy to. Raise your hand if you don't mind.
Just want to know then, what is the forum in which this is going to be discussed and the specifics, and to understand better what happened? Because it's interesting for the other leagues to know, if you're a long-term tenant, you can get kicked out. So it'd be good to know, how that happens.
We definitely can. I think we have been in talks with CB2 about, again, this March 5th meeting. I don't think we've been formally invited yet, but I assume it is forthcoming. And we can engage with some of the other leagues' leadership. Certainly the advisory council here, and again CB2, who I know has expressed interest in hosting a discussion on this, on the best way to have that.
And I just want to remind everybody that we have a March 31st meeting after CB2. So the primary discussions from my perspective. And whatever happens between January and March will come out at CB2, and then we will discuss it March 31st. So there is some groundwork and planning, and gives everybody an opportunity to. Yes, sir, John.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a resident of the West Village for 25 years. And my daughter and my son have both been through the Greenwich Village Little League, and I've been a coach there. I'm not particularly involved in the management of it or the relationships between the Hudson River Park and everything else, but I have become involved a little bit in the P3 events that have happened. And I would just like to ask Rob and others, you say it's a regretful decision, what's happening, but have there been, the little that I know about it, it seems to me like there's a real opportunity to cure any alleged eviction reasons for evicting this community-based organization. And I just want to know if, and I would like to be assured that there's going to be some efforts made by the advisory committee and others to try to solve this situation, rather than just say, oh, we regret it, but we have to kick them out, and now we have to use this space for other things. We've heard some words about what the other things might be. But if it's truly regretful that they're being sent out, are there ways, and has someone explored ways in a meaningful manner to rectify whatever the alleged reasons are being asserted for the eviction notice? And if so, who's doing that?
I don't think this is the right forum for that kind of discussion necessarily. I think this needs some.
We have sort of maintained, and I think we are old school in this way, that we have do not, for P3's own reputation and others, we have not wanted to go in publicly into the details of it.
But it is a landlord-tenant dispute, so you don't want to go into the details, but those are the details that are affecting the community. So those are the details that are going to have to be addressed either publicly or legally or however. And I think that you owe the community, this longstanding community, and I did not grow up in New York City. I've been incredibly impressed with the baseball and softball programs that my children have been able to experience here in Manhattan. I know how essential this program is. I think it's not a mischaracterization, but it's slightly misleading to say that leaving the fields to the community is sufficient, and to call it just administrative offices in P3. I don't know how many of you have been down there, but that's where the equipment bags are stored. That's where the batting cages happen. That's where the program is. So I know it's been a long meeting. I just think that there should be some serious steps to talk about bringing the community together with the P3 people and solving whatever these issues are, which are not, I know you don't want to talk about them, but whatever they are they serious enough to cause this disruption to the community? And that's just my question as a father and a community member, and I would like to ask that.
So your question is, I think the question really is best answered in March at the CB2.
Well, but it sounded like, but the problem for me, and again, I'm not familiar with this process, but the problem for me is it sounded like it was just presented as like, it's a foregone conclusion, we really regret it, but it's done. I don't think it's done for a number of reasons, but I want to know from your point of view whether you guys are considering it as being done.
John, like I said 1 second ago, they're going to be discussing this at CB2 on March 5th, and then this topic will come up for discussion with more information on March 31st. So having an adversarial dialogue of tell me this and tell me that, it's not time yet for that, for now. It's going to CB2. I really hope you go to CB2 on March 5th for that meeting there, and then it'll come back to the advisory council on the 31st. So there's many opportunities. I don't think that your voice will be unheard. Everyone has said what they needed to say this evening, but go to CB2 in March. That's the first. The most important thing right now is everything is confirmed and programming, and there's nothing happening. No loss of anything during the spring season.
Thank you very much for.
That's very helpful, Tammy, actually. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because it sounded like it's being presented as a foregone conclusion, and it sounds like you're telling me it's not.
Listen, I don't speak for the trust, I speak for the advisory council, and what we know is our path for this topic will be in March, after CB2 does it. So I encourage all the leads and all the parents, no offense intended, to go to CB2 and show up robustly and be able to talk at CB2, and I believe that the trust will be there as well.
Check our calendar and I don't know that we
And we're
have a
moving on.
location locked in.
You have Shimkin, right?
And yeah,
I'm not sure, but
I heard
but-
today we had Shimkin
okay.
Hall, which
It's-
holds about 100 people.
perfect. All
And
right,
thank you for sharing the human dimension. We appreciate it.
next topic.
All right, earlier this month, the trust released a request for proposals for operators of the trust's two newest concessions. That's at Gansevoort Peninsula and Chelsea Waterside Park. We will have in the future another new one at Pier 97, and we are working on replacing one at Pier 84. The trust is seeking operators for these two new ones for a seasonal cafe, grab and go food and beverage services. We are doing this on a short-term duration, so that's 1 year plus 2 optional 1-year renewals. While we are trying to learn more about both the demand and the market from both the consumer and the business side for the two locations before we seek a longer-term operator. These are really, we're looking for something that can go in quickly to try to get it in for the season, to try to essentially test out the market while we figure out what is viable here. With that, I'm going to take Chris McGann's pieces on this. On January 30th at 6 p.m. We will host the 6th Precinct Sector D Build the Block meeting. That is the sector that covers from Hudson Street to 14th Street all along the waterfront. It covers Hudson River Park. It is in the Pier 40 lobby. These are really great meetings if you are actually interested in public safety in Hudson River Park. We are part of New York City. We are interwoven. The fabric is united together. Things that affect the rest of the community affect us. Things that happen here affect them. So it is where all this really can be unified. You can learn a lot about trends and other things that are larger than the park, but certainly exist in the park. As part of that, we'd encourage you to come out and participate if you're able to. Winter field trips are open. So far, we've had 450 students this year come to the Discovery Tank, and 65 of those have Title I status. Title I status being majority free and low cost lunch. So it is one of the pieces in which we are helping to bring in a broad range of folks to it. We held our 4th annual ESMP Sanctuary Marine Estuarine Sanctuary Management Plan Science Sanctuary meeting earlier this month. We have a wide range of experts that go through all of the science that we have happening in the park that we work with our visiting science on, discuss with us sort of what the thoughts on it, give us ideas, connect among researchers on it. We had a lot of really great ideas on that will help plot with path forward for the science that takes place in here. You should definitely go read more about the types of things we do. I will not make you listen to it right now. In January, we started, and this is going to run through June, although we're hoping to extend. We have partnered with the Nautical School to provide free access to New York State Safe Boating Course. The New York State Safe Boating Course, it is a new class that is required for everyone who operates a motorized boat in New York State. You have to have either a New York State one or an equivalent one from your own state. It is a requirement kicked in January 1, 2025. We expect there to be sort of demand as people this year have to figure out how to get it. And so we are partnering with the Nautical School, who's going to be providing free classes. You can go sign up on our website. There is a class limit on how many people they can have at once. So you can sign up. There is through their website. It's free. It happens at the Pier 84 classroom. You can book yourself out too. I believe January took place this weekend and was sold out. February may also be already sold out, so definitely go take a look. 2024, we had over 23,000 hours of field time with public schools, youth, adult leagues, and open hours. We had 40 different permittees for our winter season, which is our lightest for obvious reasons. 2025 season kicks off on March 17 and runs through June 15. Applications are now closed. summer season applications open March 17th. So if you're looking for a summer application, you should, we'll be accepting March 17th, April 15th. We've had requests before to try to align with park season. So you'll note these times are slightly different than they have. They're about 2 weeks off. The summer season will run from June 17 to August 31, which we will sync up with the Parks Department fall season, winter season, spring season, but New York City Parks does spring and summer combined. We, because of our extensive camps here and our understanding the importance of it for our youth leagues and others, will be dividing that going forward, maintaining sort of this June 15th break between the spring and the summer, continuing to run a separate summer season, and then again, syncing back up in the fall. That's kind of our current status right now. Certainly, if there's that feedback from our leagues and others, we sort of welcome it, but we are trying to sync up as requested. Thank you. We emailed our Pier 40 pedestrian safety and security grant. This is $1 million from Congressman Nadler. This is a very long process. We got the money in 2022 awarded. We have finally made it through the HUD process. I believe, Rob, 6 grant administrators, something like that. This is going to be going to to replacing and putting in new railings around Pier 40, light fixtures and security bollards. We're going to be looking at trying to lift some of the street furniture and other pieces off of the frontage of Pier 40 to create smaller sidewalk in a very congested area. Again, this is a project that will happen as we have contractors and others. So for our tenants and others, we will coordinate with folks as we get into it. We don't have our plans yet. With that, I will end. I'm going to skip over, Rob, the rest of your report. I'm sorry. We have seasonal decor. We have lots of other great things. I do want to share that the governor, in her executive budget for this year, included $85 million for Pier 76. We still obviously have the legislative process to go and appropriations, and this is by no means a guarantee, but we're very excited for both the vote of confidence from the governor in the project, but also incredibly grateful for the advisory council, CB4, and the broad range of stakeholders who stuck with us through the Pier 76 task force process, our local elected officials, which picked that up and turned it into legislation that passed last year that would authorize it. And now we're hopeful for this appropriation to be able to help jumpstart and keep this project moving forward. It is not all the money we will need, but it is certainly a significant portion of it, and we're hopeful that it makes it through. With that, I will end.
Has anyone ever covered more content than your agenda?
Okay, it is 9:02. Do I have?
Bravo.
Second, third.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. See you in March.